Hello, and welcome back to Reclaim Within. Have you ever wondered why some behaviors in your relationship feel so familiar, like they've been with you forever? Today, we're talking about bonding patterns, what they are, how they shape our lives, and how we can navigate them consciously to create a legacy of love and connection. I have been asked to speak about this concept from a dear friend and listener, and it's been really fun. I've actually gotten some requests lately on different topics to cover. And so I'm loving that. It's giving me so much creativity to be able to bring to concepts that you actually want to learn about. So that's really fun. To reclaim within is to actually be able to understand how we work and how the relationships in our lives work. I think that relationships are the fabric of our lives. It all comes back to relationships. It all comes back to how we engage with our relationships. They are what matters most. They are what give us meaning. And so we're going to explore the beauty of bonding patterns and what they are and how they connect us to values and traditions. But also, we're going to talk about how some bonding patterns can keep us stuck in cycles that actually no longer serve us, and how to be able to break free by bringing awareness and conscious choice into our lives. So, let's start off with talking about what's the definition of a bonding pattern? What is this? So, bonding patterns are emotional and behavioral imprints that we develop through our relationships and significant experiences in our lives. They oftentimes originate from childhood, and they can actually shape how we operate in the world today. And so to really understand bonding patterns, we need to understand their function. Like, why are they there? Well, in the first 7 years of life and beyond, but specifically those first seven, our main focus is, as children, is to stay safe. And so to become merged with our caregivers is how we learn originally to stay safe. So the emotional states and the way that our caregivers operate in their day-to-day lives becomes our safety mechanism. It becomes what we've learned to attune to. It's like a frequency through an emotional experience that we've learned this is how you stay safe, is you bond to this personal experience. We tend to orient towards the ones that are sticky in wanting to understand like how to shift and change and transform our lives. And truly to understand your bonding patterns will lead to so much transformation if you want it to. However, I think it's really also important to understand there's such beautiful ways to be bonded to our caregivers. So, for example, I inherited a very deep connection to Mother Earth through my family's gardening and canning practices. We spent a lot of time outside in the warm weather. My parents both gardened and canned and cared for large acreage of land, and they were stewards of the earth. And so the guardians of the earth, I grew up in very close relationship. So that's air, earth, water, and fire. And I am so grateful that I've been able to inherit this deep love and care for Mother Earth from my family of origin. That is a bonding pattern that has served me very, very well. Another bonding pattern that has served me very well is there was a high value in my family of being bonded in community. So often we'd have family and friends over for potlucks and parties, and this experience really heightened this or strengthened the relationship that I have to being somebody who really loves to be in and build communities. It's actually a huge part of what I do. I now teach other people how to build and bond in communities. I really believe that being able to be connected and belong to something or somewhere, or someone, is the most important thing that we have on this planet. It's just really important that we understand and that we pass down bonding patterns with that honor life, that honor our human experience. So when we pass these patterns down with honor, dignity, and respect, bonding patterns can become prayers. Truly, they can become like living legacies of connection that we can offer to future generations. And you can actually cultivate these experiences for yourself, for those around you, for friends, for your family, It's beautiful. Okay, so let's talk about the stickier part now. So there is also a stuckness that can come, and it's really difficult because we feel like a fish in water with these bonding patterns. It's really hard sometimes to see the forest through the trees because, again, remember, it's just the way that we attuned to the environment around us. So if you grew up in a home where people were fighting all the time or yelling at each other all the time, that's going to just feel normal to you. It's going to feel normal to just yell at somebody as a form of communication. Or if you grew up in a home where nobody spoke to each other, or nobody gave each other hugs, or nobody said, I love you, then it's going to feel so strange if someone tries to give you a hug or tells you they love you, because you're not bonded to that. You haven't bonded to that being the way of life. It doesn't make it good, bad, right, wrong. It just means that the way that we experience and understand our environments then affect the world around us. This is how you can see different cultural upbringings, different faiths, different understandings of how the world works. We're all here to be different. It's actually such a beautiful thing that we're bonded in these different ways to each other. All right, so I'm going to give you a couple of bonding patterns that I've seen in working with the hundreds and hundreds of people that I've worked with. And these are just very common bonding patterns that I witness in our collective consciousness that I think it's time for us all to shift out of. I think it's bubbling right now. So I think it's really fun to be able to talk about this because I think that a lot of people will relate. So the first bonding pattern I see often is the pattern of anxiety and overwhelm. A lot of us, many generations of us, have had caregivers who were in some sort of survival mode. And they usually were bonded to their caregiver's survival mode of some sort. And this survival mode, it's very unintentionally passed down, but it's passed down as emotional dysregulation. And so as children, we bond to our caregiver's anxiety or overwhelm as actually a way to stay connected to them. It's actually a way for us to feel like we are in connection to our parents, even if it is a connection of anxiety and overwhelm. What happens though is that this pattern then shows up later on in adulthood, and it leads to cycles of stress, of shutdown, of blaming others or self-blame. And so where we can shift gears is we can ask ourselves, am I actually too busy? Am I actually too stressed? Or is it okay that I sit for 5 minutes or cultivate a meditation practice or a mindfulness practice? Working on your breathing patterns, that has changed my whole life. Turns out the breath leads to everything. So being able to learn to train yourself to breathe deep into your diaphragm, even just consciously, like 4 or 5 times a day, it's so simple, but it will shift so much. You will feel so much more regulated throughout your day if you just can shift how you breathe. Another pattern that I witness so often in our current collective experience is a bonding pattern to poor communication. So in homes where either emotions weren't expressed or maybe emotions weren't addressed, children bond to either silence or miscommunication. And so as adults, this can manifest as either unexpressed needs. It can come off as passive expectations. It can come off as resentment. And so why it matters is that understanding how these patterns shape us is really important, because one day you're going to end up in relationships with a lot of people. As adults, we are in relationship with so many people, and it's really helpful to understand the bonds that we made when we were young to keep us safe as like a pseudo safety mechanism that no longer serve us. If maybe you were afraid of a parent's reaction because they were maybe sometimes explosive or really judgmental, you might actually try not to communicate with people. You might try to brush things under the rug. but then they might come out really big later because you never addressed anything in the first place. You withdraw, or sometimes overwhelm just makes us shut down. So maybe you had one or two parents that were just in shutdown mode. And that's what you learn to do, is just to shut it all down. Well, what happens is those patterns then later on in life, they can get us in trouble, right? And so it's up to us as adults to take on the responsibility of understanding and witnessing where we were bonded to, what we learned it was to be a woman, we learned it was to be a man, what we learned it was to be a provider of the home, what we learned it was to be in relationship in general, right? And it's up to us to now actually be in the agency seat of our own lives and be like, does this actually feel good to me? Am I enjoying the way that this is going? And just asking those questions can truly change everything. Because once you realize it's not your fault for how you're operating, but you've bonded to a pattern that no longer serves you, then you can actually do something about it. But without awareness, these patterns just become invisible drivers of our behaviors, and it keeps us in cycles that do not align with who we actually want to be or the relationships that we all really deeply want to have. We all want connection. We all want understanding. Every person on this earth has a beautiful, tender heart that just longs to be seen, felt, heard, and cared for. Every single person. And so why is awareness the first step? Because you cannot change what you do not see. And this is difficult. Awareness is the first step, is actually not always easy because, like I said before, with these bonding patterns, we were just the fish in water as children. We were just raised in the home we were raised in. And the patterns we bonded to, we just thought that that was how life went. That was connection to that person. So whether one of our parents was a rager or not, or whether one of our parents was avoidant or not, or invasive or not, we just learned that that was how life is. That's just how we exist in the world. We just bonded to that person's consciousness, but we also bonded to their unconsciousness. And this is where bonding patterns can be really, really beautiful and really, really sneaky. So we have to start by noticing the patterns. And here's where I like to start off with my clients. Okay, here are the 3 questions I ask a lot. 1, where do you feel stuck or limited? 2, what habits feel familiar but unhelpful? And could these be connected in any way to either the ways that my caregivers operated or to some big life event that I've lived through? Bonding patterns are so fundamental to understand relationships. They are the foundation of all of our relationships, all of them. And yet we don't talk about them. It was only through one of my teachers that I even learned what these were, and it changed completely how I understand and I live my life, how I see other people, how I see myself, like just a huge shift. But what bonding patterns are at the very essence is they're just imprints. They're imprints from your past. And so with awareness, you can consciously decide which patterns to keep and which ones to release. So if you're bonded to anxiety, creating those rituals for calm and regulation, like I had mentioned before, breathing, huge shift to just breathe differently, or practicing mindfulness. If maybe you bonded to shutdown or lack of communication or just poor communication, you can practice expressing your needs and staying present in challenging conversations. That is so much easier said than done, trust me. Yet it's so powerful when you start to actually be able to orient to, this is how I felt when that happened. You didn't do anything wrong, but this is how I felt when that happened. Huge shift in your relational spaces. So even the patterns that no longer serve us, again, were born from a place of love and survival. They were born from a place of bonding to the people that were raising us most of the time. They can also be bonded to, like I said before, events. So what's really helpful is just to honor them for the role that they played, while also stepping into new ways of being that align with your current values and your true soul's essence. And allow yourself to get connected to the beautiful things you've bonded to the things that you do want to take on with you and carry forward into the relationships that you have with your life, and find gratitude for those bonding patterns too. I think that we often have a tendency to just look at the hard things. And that's not what this life is about. This life is about remembering how sacred this human experience is, like all of the human experience, which means that finding the gift and the wisdom in the hurt and the pain, and also finding those moments of joy and bliss and beauty and delicious bonding patterns that have actually fulfilled and filled us up in our lives that we get to carry on with us. So yes, bonding patterns shape our lives and relationships, connecting us to the people and experiences that matter the most. While some patterns can keep you stuck, awareness and choice will allow you to consciously create the relationships and the lives that we all truly desire. So my ask for the week is take a moment and just reflect, maybe journal on your bonding patterns that you can witness yourself. Ask, what patterns do I want to honor and carry forward in my life? And which bonding patterns am I ready to release? Another really fun way to work with this that I do with a lot of people I work with is I ask them to find 5 people in their life, or 2 people in their life, however many, that they feel really, really comfortable with, that they could maybe go and ask about bonding patterns and how they think that you've been bonded to different pieces in your life that have helped you and also that have challenged you. This has been one of my favorite tools that I've used in my own life, having people reflect back to me, people that I love and that I trust, and that are going to actually have my best interest in mind. I'll say it that way. So it comes back as an honest, caring perspective and not like a projection from their own distortion. You got to be really aware of that. But it's really beautiful to get to have someone else help me see myself, because bonding patterns oftentimes do put us in such a experience of where we're just the fish in water. It's so helpful and so wonderful to have someone else assist us in being able to understand why we bonded to what we bonded to in the way that we have. So when we bring light to our bonding patterns, and when we reclaim our power to create the legacy of love, wisdom, and connection for ourselves and future generations, that's where all the good stuff happens. You know, the bonding patterns in themselves are going to be there whether we like it or not. And so it's just about us bringing more choice, agency, and facilitating ourselves into a life that we cherish and love, and where we can actually feel like our real selves. I think that's been one of the hardest and most beautiful parts of my journey, is understanding what I was bonded to from a place of orienting to safety, but that actually wasn't keeping me safe anymore. And it was not always easy to unbond from that pattern, because it did give my younger self a form of safety. Oh my gosh, but the freedom and the connection to myself in not being so overly bonded to those different patterns in my life that I have moved through, that I have lived through the experience of, there is nothing more empowering than being in choice with how you operate and finding more of your true soul's essence. So thank you so much for joining me today and spending your time with me. If any of this has resonated with you, it would be so honoring if you could share it with someone else who might find it meaningful, or who might gain some clarity through learning about bonding patterns. And let's continue the conversation about reclaiming within and creating lives of connection, honor, beauty, and intention. I will see you next time. Also, if you would like to join my Building the Inner Kingdom workshop, I am now going to be extending the registration to that until the middle of end of March. You can also work with me personally one-on-one. I work with couples and individuals on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And all I ask is that you sign up for a 3-month container with me so we can really get in there and help make some real transformative movement in your lives to be able to actually live a life with honor, dignity, and respect. Takes some reorienting for some of us. And yet it's so beautiful when you can reclaim within and build your own inner kingdom. It's like nothing else. And the last way that you can work with me is to join one of my Sacred Reclaim Within circles, where I go into more of the mystery school education and be able to counsel people in more of a group setting. So reach out to me, either my email at reclaimwithin@gmail.com, or you can find me on Instagram or Substack, just Reclaim Within. I'm really honored and feel so blessed to be able to be connecting with more and more of you. Thank you for spending your time with me. It's such a valuable asset, and I do not take it for granted. Thank you so much.